Well, I didn't need surgery. I needed to go on blood thinners for 9 months. I mean, and that stuff is just awful. I had to give myself a shot every day, and then I had to go on warfarin.
What were you on, Coumarin?
It's called Coumadin.
Yeah, it's Coumadin. I know how it was. People don't even realize how that was developed. You know that I remember when I was studying pharmacology as a graduate student, I think it was a student in graduate school designed a rat poison that if you put it into the food, the bait, the rat would eat the food, and the poison that he developed was the progenitor, the grandfather of the Coumadin. It caused bleeding. The rat would bleed to death. Did you know that?
It's rat poison. Exactly, I did. And
very few people understand that medicines and poisons are only a matter of dosage. You know that.
That's exactly it. It's an old drug, and you're taking a controlled dose of rat poison.
Well, so today you've given up. The point of your story is a little different, though. It's about weightlifting and how it almost killed you. So obviously you've modified your exercise regimen.
Yeah. I don't. I don't push myself. I do more cardio. I do push-ups, things with my own body weight. I do weights, but more reps. Less.
Dan, when you do push-ups. Here's another one. When you do push-ups, how many do you do? Do you do till you're gagging?
No, I'll do maybe 25 or 30, sometimes 50, but I don't do it till I'm, why do
right.
that? No,
that's exactly what I'm getting at. Think of Tai Chi when you do any exercise. Think of gentle motion. Think of slow motion, easy on your body. The body's not made for it after a certain age. You're not a kid anymore.
Exactly, and even kids.
Well, Dan, you read increasingly of young kids getting heart attacks today playing ball. It happens even to youngsters today because of the garbage food that they're eating. Their arteries are clogged.
Exactly.
Do you know that, Dan? Do you know that famous study of autopsies that were done on soldiers in the Korean War, then the Vietnam War, and what they found?
No.
Oh well, hold on. I'm going to tell it to you on the air. And I think maybe if I'm not I can't with any certainty say it was going back to World War II because I would be making it up. But I know for sure that there was a comparison done between the deceased soldiers, the autopsies, for example, of soldiers who had died in the Korean War, and then of soldiers who they autopsied during the Vietnam War. And there was a degeneration of the arterial system, the cardiovascular system, that was dramatic as a result of dietary alterations in the American diet, rather. In other words, if you went back and you did an autopsy of guys who died in World War II, you would have found a much different picture internally, that is in their arteries, than you would have found, let's say, by 1952. And then you speed it up to 1969, it's a whole different story, because the junk food diet had already become prevalent in America by the time these boys, God bless their souls, the guys who died in Vietnam, who had, they already grew up. You're talking about guys who were born in 50, et cetera, maybe 1950. So by then they're already eating junk food in the 50s. Back in the 40s, there was very little junk food. The diet was totally different back in the 1940s. And, of course, you go back and back and back. It's the same thing. You find more whole foods, less fat, less sugar in the diet. Right now we have a sugar epidemic in America. And you say, well, what does that have to do with arterial damage? Well, you read the work of the recently deceased great doctor. He just died, and he was one of my heroes. But I don't think I want to put his name out and have a rush on it. The guys let him level. But he wrote about the sugar disease a long time ago. He said a good many of the degenerative diseases of our time are based on too high a quantity of refined sugars in the diet. He wasn't even laying the blame on the doorstep of the fats, by the way, which is a whole other controversial area. We are fat obsessed in the United States of America, to the detriment of the health of many women and children. You see families today raising children on pure vegetarian or vegan diets, and the children are suffering. They're tired. They can't focus. They're not bright. They're getting vitamin deficiency diseases, and the mothers will not give them a hamburger. Oh, no, my child's never eaten red meat. Great, but take a look at your child's health. My child's never had a piece of chicken. Well, I had this experiment when my children were little, and I told you about it. There were many people back in the day who were raising their children vegetarian. I wasn't, because I knew children needed a diet rich in protein, a certain amount of fat, etc. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, I was totally into health at that time. You know, ground up apricots, vegetables. So don't think I was just feeding junk food. But mixed in with every meal was a high degree of good quality protein. You know, if I made hamburgers, I ground onions into them. So the long and short of it is, if friends' kids would come over to dinner, and my kids were eating chicken, and the parent with the vegetarian child would turn her head, that kid would grab the chicken off my kid's plate. The child was starving. Now go to the women today, the young women. The skinny young women with perfect figures, so-called, the ones who look like post-op transvestites, which is the new model, let's say, for the American woman. It used to be a full hip woman, a woman with a certain voluptuousness was considered the social norm. Today, because of various influences, which I don't have to spell out, a woman tries to look like a man who's had a surgery. These women are near insane, many of them, from a lack of nutrients such as iron. They're suffering iron deficiency. They're suffering deficiency of the B vitamins. They're suffering folic acid deficiencies because they know nothing about food and diet. Nothing. They're not being taught anything about it. Many of them have anxiety attacks. They put them on pills. And the reason they'll take the pills is because it doesn't add any weight. It's not what they need. They need to go on a balanced diet, which means real food. So anyway, and by the way, you can be a vegetarian, don't get me wrong, if you know how to balance your foods. Please don't misinterpret what I'm saying. I wrote books on this going back 30 years ago, so I understand that. You can. It's very difficult, though, and then you have to supplement your diet with certain B vitamins, which you're not going to get from the vegetables. But people don't do that. They don't know it. But women are a special case. I mean, women are different than men with regard to things that occur in their body on a regular monthly basis. And during that phase of their month, they're losing a certain amount of iron, for example. They are deficient in iron, and it causes an energy loss. Women don't understand this, and they have to understand it. So anyway, look, this is well established in good old health books that were written, I would say, more than 10 years ago. You can't find a lot of this information anymore. And yes, I'm going to pitch you now. Buy Healing Children Naturally. Why? Because it actually has great diets for prospective parents who can't have children. There's a diet for pregnancy. There's diets for the father even prior to conception. You say, wow, that's quackery. All right, then go take drugs. See if I care. I'll be back. Michael Savage here, 1-800-449-8255. We're talking about many different things other than the healthcare reform issue, which is a big one, obviously. I've given you ideas to rein in costs, tort reform, no free care for non-citizens. Notice how you don't hear any of these ideas discussed by anybody, which is why talk radio is so important, number one. And, of course, why we in talk radio must continue to talk. The reason they want to shut us out of the debate is because we are not beholden to the lawyers. We're not beholden to La Raza, and therefore we present seriously important ideas. Daryl, Los Angeles, welcome to the Savage Nation. Go ahead, please.
Michael, I've been a martial artist for 30 years, and moderation is the key.
Well, you see, you probably teach Tai Chi, I would guess. I'm not sure.
Tempo karate.
But isn't karate something where you use extreme force?
Well, you're learning to create force, but you don't do it by stressing out your body, like you were saying. You do it by learning to create energy.
Interesting. You know, I've always been fascinated by martial arts and martial artists. I don't practice myself. I don't know anything about it. But the more I read, the more I'm amazed at the force inside a human being, and rather how you can draw force from, literally from the air and direct it through your body. I'm astounded by it, Daryl. I think that's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, it's called Qi, or Qi in Chinese, the internal power. And you
look, Daryl, let's be honest. You know I have Qi energy for the radio, correct?
Yeah, correct. I agree with that.
All right, thanks for the call. So I know a little bit about marshaling Qi energy in order to do this radio show 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. Okay? Okay, last call right now. San Francisco, Mark, welcome to the Savage Nation. Mark.
Savage, it's an honor.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I'm in San Francisco for a couple days. That's the one thing I should be doing around the city.
So you want me to give you some tips on what to do as a tourist in San Francisco? Let's see. The new police chief who just came on board the other day said he was shocked to see an open drug deal right in front of the police station. in San Francisco. So I could say if you want to see a drug deal, go to City Hall. That would be something to observe. If you'd like to see a bum urinating on something, you can go to City Hall and see him urinating on the front steps of City Hall. There's another interesting site that you can send home to Peoria. But if you want to look at beautiful things, I'd say go down to Fisherman's Wharf at the end of the day and watch the fog blow in through the Golden Gate. It's a sight that you'll never forget as long as you live. But bring a coat, bring a sweater. But watching the fog blowing in through the gate at the end of the day is unbelievably miraculous. Go over the Golden Gate Bridge, go to Sausalito, and watch the fog drift down over the hills at the end of the day. It's a sight you'll never forget. That's if you love fog in the summertime, as I do. This is the Savage Nation. The phone number, as you well know, is well established. Look, remember, all of my books were written as a centrist. I considered myself a centrist as a nutritionist way back when, and I am a centrist when it comes to politics, believe it or not.